Hi everybody, Dr. Richardson here, Cal State Northridge Health Professions Advisor. I'm making a new video. This is end of summer 2025, making a new video about the application timeline. Now this short video will look at both kind of visually and in words at the timeline of applying to health profession schools. I've also combined all of the major health professions in this video. So we're not just talking about med school or dental, but we're talking about all of them. There are a lot of similarities in the different health professions applications with respects to the applications themselves, the different sections, the information that they want from you, and even in the timeline of when they open and close and things like that. There's a few outliers, which you're going to see in the next slide, but there's really a lot of similarities. So, let's start by showing you our fantastic chart. You have no idea how long it took me to make this. No, I'm just kidding. But I find that when we're talking about the application process, it can often be easier for people to have a visual. So let's start here at the top. We've got January, all the months, to December. And then the following year starts with January and we go through July. Now, this year here, from January to December, we are going to call the application year. The application year. This is the year that you are applying. And then starting with January, going to the next July, we would call this the matriculation year. Matriculation means when you start an education program, when you matriculate. So that's why it only goes till July, because that's when the med school, the pharmacy school, the dental school, etc. They usually start in July. Some may start in August, but in the late summer is usually when they start. That's why this calendar stops right here, because then after that you're off in med school, pharmacy school, dental school, etc. But it's helpful, I think, to be using consistent language, and the language would be, this is your application year, the year you're filling out the application, and then the following year will be your matriculation year, if of course you are admitted. Now let's start by looking here. You see the main major healthcare professions. They are shortened because we got a lot of information on this one slide. Vet, of course, veterinary school. PA, physician assistant. Med is medical, the MD and the DO schools. Dent, of course, dental. Pharm, pharmacy. Optometry. And then PT is physical therapy, and OT is occupational therapy, and POD is podiatry. So the arrows are coming down from the month that the applications open every year. Veterinary school is the outlier. That application opens in January every year. Very uncommon. The rest of them are concentrated in April, May, June, July, and August. So that is when the vast majority of these health professions applications will open. And you see I kind of have a line here which shows that the applications open, depending on the specialty, between January and August. And these applications are what we call the primary application. The primary application. So that's when they open, and that's when you can begin to fill them out. Now, after someone fills out and submits their primary application, there is more to do. For example, you see here secondary applications, medical school. Medical schools are really big on sending out secondary applications. So once a person fills out and sends out their med school application, they will be spending several months filling out secondary applications. Also, once everybody sends out their applications, they should, that late summer and early fall, begin to prepare themselves for interviews. We want to think positive. I'm going to get interviews, and no one should go into an interview cold. Should definitely do some interview prep. Watch some YouTube videos, make an appointment, come in and talk with me. We can practice some questions, but definitely should be doing some interview prep. Once you've applied, done secondary apps if needed, gone on interviews, then typically the acceptances would start coming in. There is a wide range of time that acceptances can come in, but that would be the natural evolution: primary app, secondary app, interviews, acceptance. A few other things. Most people will need financial aid when they go to medical or dental or PA school. So a person would also, later in the application year and beginning of matriculation year, would be applying for financial aid. There are a number of scholarships: military scholarship, National Health Service Corps scholarship, that people could apply for, but they would be dealing with the money issues here. Applying for financial aid and or scholarships, getting ready for the money aspect of professional school. Later in the matriculation year, closer to the time that you're going to start, final transcripts would be required. If you're still in school, of course, during the application and matriculation school, if you're still getting your bachelor, or if you're taking any classes after you graduate, you would have to send the school that you're admitted to your final transcripts. And many of the schools will require background checks for crimes, misdemeanors, felonies, things like that. And so you may have to go through a background check. And then finally, matriculation. So hopefully this visual kind of shows what happens during the application process. Now I want to draw your attention over here to the bottom left. These are the things that should be worked on before you apply. So we're going to go over them quickly here. I'm also going to give a brief month-by-month breakdown. And then for most of these items, we have additional YouTube videos that address some of these items specifically. For example, definitely a person needs to be working on their personal statement right in here. Any test prep, MCAT prep, DAT prep, GRE prep, OAT prep, if there's an entrance test required, then in the beginning here of this application year, a person should be, if they haven't already before the application year, should be preparing to take the entrance test. Additional SJTs. SJTs are situational judgment tests, such as the AAMC preview exam or the Casper exam. And so depending on the school, if it's required, you might have to be taking some SJTs. A work and activities list. Everybody should, on a Word document, write up their work and activities, because on all of these applications, that's one of the portions of the application. You get to list all your work, your extracurriculars, and all of that. We have to deal with letters of recommendation, asking professors. We definitely have to have a list of schools that we're going to apply to, and there are, for many of the applications, fee assistance programs. If you qualify for any of these fee assistance programs, you have to submit tax returns, in some cases maybe your parents' tax returns, but if you meet certain low income levels, you would qualify for some help to pay for the applications. So again, application year, matriculation year. This shows when the primary applications open. After that, we're dealing with secondary applications, interviews, acceptances, must handle financial issues to be prepared, final transcripts and possible background checks, and then you matriculate, and it's like the happiest day of your life. Well, maybe getting an acceptance is the happiest day. This is a nervous day because you're headed into something brand new. And then we did talk about several things that have to be handled in the beginning of an application year, so you can see people will be really busy. The rest of these slides are really just more of a list form of what you just saw in that visual slide. So when do the applications open? These are the actual names of these application services. In many of them, you see CAS, which stands for Centralized Application Service. So the medical school, allopathic, the MD is called AMCAS. Medical schools, the osteopathic is called ACOMAS. Podiatry, they don't pronounce that as a word. They just call it AACPMAS for podiatry schools. ADSAS is what they call it for dental schools. PharmCAS for pharmacy. OptomCAS for optometry. VMCAS for vet school. PTCAS for physical therapy. OTCAS, occupational therapy, CASPA for PA, and then nursing CAS. And again, this just shows the month each year that these application services open. The med, dent, and vet school apps all have soft openings, which means there's one date when the application opens and you can start working on it, but there's a later date when you can start submitting. They call that a soft opening. Only med, dent, and vet school have that. Again, before the application process starts, there is a lot of work to do. Test prep. When will you start studying? What products will you use to study with? You've got to make your appointment to actually take that entrance test, the MCAT or the DAT. You've got to register for any SJT, situational judgment tests. You've got to apply for fee assistance if applicable, if you believe you qualify for that. You got to prepare that personal statement, ask for letters of recommendation, create your list of extracurricular and work experience. We usually recommend you do like mini essays for each one because they will ask you to write those up in the application. And then everyone should create a list of schools that they want to apply to. All of this will help make, if you can work on it, obviously before the app starts, will make the application process smoother, because then once the application opens, you'll be ready for all of these items. If you maybe didn't like my chart in visual, if maybe just a bunch of words is a little harder and you want to see something month by month, here is what I would say to you. I would say this would be December of the year before your app year. So, fall semester's over, it's holiday time. I think that's a perfect time for people to start on their personal statement over the winter holiday. You're usually not working, not in school, a little bit more relaxed. January of application year, I recommend people get feedback on and refine their personal statement. People can make an appointment and bring it in so I can look at it, Sometimes people want to get feedback from relatives, friends, other people they know. That's fine too. Usually in February, I definitely think by then people should be writing up their experiences, work and activities section, and they also, perhaps using that list of experiences, can prepare a resume. Why do we need that? Because we're going to give it to the people who are going to write us our letters. You might also want to start your school list in February, and then if you're applying to vet school, app opens in January. By February, you want to get closer to submitting it. In March, I usually recommend people contact their letter writers. Hey, Richardson, will you write me a letter applying to med school this year? Sure, no problem. And the reason to ask them in March is because you want to give people time. You don't want to go to someone and say, can you write me a letter and it needs to be submitted next week? No good. You definitely should give people, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. So maybe around March, if your app opens in, May or June or July, maybe around March, contact letter writers. I always recommend you give them a copy of your personal statement, which you wrote over the winter holiday, hopefully, and your resume, so they have more information to write a better letter for you. Around April of application year, if you don't already, you should have your final draft of your personal statement and your work and experiences. May of application year, if you're applying to PA, opens in April. By May, you should probably submit. June, if you're applying to med or dental, you should be submitting your app in June. July, maybe if you're med, dent, PA, or vet, start receiving or working on any secondary applications. If you're applying to pharmacy, optometry, OT, or PT, you should be submitting your app in July. August, again, pre-meds, going to be working on secondaries. If you're applying to podiatry school, should submit in August. By September, most of the app submissions have been done. So if you're pre-med, you're working on secondaries, maybe preparing for some interviews. For some, interviews can start coming in, maybe for vet school, maybe for PA school, maybe for med or dental. Acceptances can start coming in September for all of them except med and dental. Each of these med and dent have a certain date before which nobody can get an acceptance. October, maybe still working on secondaries if you're pre-med, maybe getting interviews. Acceptances, again, can start be coming in for any except dental, because in October is the first month which the MD schools can give anybody an acceptance. November, interviews, acceptances, hopefully, except dental. December, interviews and acceptances. The dental schools have all agreed across the country, nobody gets an acceptance before December. But by then, acceptances can start coming in even for the pre-dents. Interviews and acceptances have a wide range of time. They can continue into the matriculation year. January, February, March, April, even May. I've heard it before. So interviews and acceptances continue into the matriculation year. And then, as I said in the visual thing, once you're accepted, final transcripts, you'll have to deal with financial aid and possibly background checks. All right, that was just a brief video to give a really big overview of the application process. Certainly, this should not take the place of, getting with an advisor to talk about it, but I wanted to put out this short video. I'm also working on a video that will be out very soon that goes into more detail about the application itself, the primary applications. What's in it, what are you filling out, and all of that. I'm almost done with that PowerPoint, and as soon as that's done, will record that video. All right, everyone, hope that was helpful. We'll talk to you soon, and everybody take care out there.